Good morning, everybody. I'm Sam Tallman, Director of Energy Services for Green Power Technologies. Puerto Rico, we develop small hydroelectric turbine projects in Puerto Rico and around the Caribbean. I'm joined, as always, by my conversation partner, Tom King, founding director of Fundación Borincana, that runs a variety of projects in renewable energy, energy capital access programs, solar IT, AC, a variety of others. I encourage you to get in touch with us. We've got a lot going on, and always want to hear from you, whether you want to learn more about Fundación Borincana's work, Green Power Technologies work, or the Energy Forum. Tom was just alluding to this a little bit, but this is one of three segments we've got going on now, and we're very excited about that. We have this the last Tuesday of every month. As you all know, you're here, and thank you for that. This is open to the public, and we encourage everybody to join, be a part of the conversation as Tom and I discuss with our expert guests about, well, their area of expertise. And the other two segments are the Thursday.
Well, let's be fair. We often talk to them about things that have nothing to do with their area of expertise, but
experts in so many ways, and more expert than us in many of them. We also have a segment called Puerto Rico Energy in 60 Minutes. It is a news blast where we discuss topical issues happening in energy in Puerto Rico. And we've got a couple of really exciting conversations. We had a great conversation this past Thursday with Angel Rivera de la Cruz, former energy commissioner and legislative aide in the Senate, talking about LUMA's contract, net metering, and PREPA's debt. If you get my emails, you will have seen a link to the YouTube recording of that. And yeah, I commend it to all of you. I think it's a great conversation and very informative, insightful, and I learned a lot. I imagine you all will too. The Thursday before that, we had a conversation we're calling Power Hour. Normally it's hosted by Ron Leonard, and because of busy schedules and life generally, Tom and I took over, and we had a
best show yet.
Yeah, you did a great job.
We had a great conversation about well, I've sent you the link. Take a look at it, and I would encourage you to become a member. Tom and I are putting this on with the support of Lisbeth and Javier from Fundación Borincana, and we could use your support. We want to another reason to reach out to us is to learn more about the benefits of becoming a member and what you get, not least of which is you get these meetings regularly on your calendar without having to hit a registration link and hear from me. So that, amongst other things, is a great benefit, and we appreciate all the people who have become members so far and supported us. Last piece of housekeeping is, Tom, you mentioned that we've got an event in September. You want to tell the kind people about that?
Well, I did. I started before, but yeah, sure. And we are from the 24th of September. I think we should probably save the date at this point. But it's part of National Clean Energy Week. Now, National Clean Energy Week itself, and by the way, this is the second event in Puerto Rico that connected with National Clean Energy Week that the Fundación is associated with, but the other one was pre-pandemic, so no one will remember it. But National Clean Energy Week itself is a brainchild of the Citizens for Responsible Energy Forum in DC. This is the 8th annual event for National Clean Energy Week. It follows Energy Week in New York City at the end of September, and it's focused across the country around largely around energy policy developments, looking at how we can continue to promote the spread and adoption of clean energy and clean energy technologies, and the most effective and efficient ways to transition between the old energy and the new energy, without forgetting to recognize that old energy still has a role to play in the transition. So very, very pragmatic movement to a brighter, cleaner, more energy diverse and distributed and just energy system. So as part of this, we're hosting a satellite event. This will get some national attention, so it's worthwhile noting that we're part of something bigger. We will host an afternoon on the 24th. There will be some panels. There will be some speeches, and broadly focused on items of national and Puerto Rican importance. So at the moment, we've got one panel we know we're going to do on microgrids and microgrid regulation. This is tentatively labeled as an opportunity. Puerto Rico's leadership in the energy transition. We haven't settled on a final title, but part of National Clean Energy Week. It's going to be fun. It's going to be participatory. It will be a paid event. There will be discounts for members. There will of course be a reception following the afternoon, and we hope to have something out in terms of an agenda for folks probably sometime within the week. But we're working on it. There are opportunities for sponsorship, and so we'll be reaching out to people with sponsorship packages. You'll be getting local attention, but you'll also be getting some national attention, as I've said. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mentioned before, we've also agreed with Gabrielle to do a special edition of Green Drinks. So people don't have to leave after 6, after the reception. You can roll right into Green Drinks. And if you can't make the conference, or if shame on you, you don't want to, but you want to come for the drinks, come for the drinks. And so we'll be getting that out as well. So it should be informative, fun, and a good opportunity to network, which are some of the core elements of what the Energy Forum is all about.
One of the things that, Tom, you and I have talked about, and I've talked to a number of other people about what is part of the goal in this is highlight cool, successful, worthwhile, exciting stuff that's going on in Puerto Rico and energy. And I think there's a dearth of knowledge about the challenges that have been faced, but we want to make sure that we're also highlighting all the reasons that we're optimistic and serve continuously as honest brokers about how do we succeed more. So on that note, my clock reads just after 10 past 11. So let's introduce our guest. Julian Herencia is the executive director for the Renewable Energy Producers Association, APER for its name in Spanish. He's also president of Caribbean Energy Services Group, CES Group, based in San Juan. Julian, welcome. Thanks for being a part of the Puerto Rico Energy Forum.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all participants for the opportunity to share with you our views and our information about renewable energy in Puerto Rico.
So let's start off then with what may seem like a basic question, but what are the priorities of APER? What is your reason for being?
Well, APER was founded 10 years ago. So back in 2000, as a matter of fact, about 2013, when renewable energy was incipient in Puerto Rico, and there was a lot of institutional opposition way back when from everywhere, right? From the government, from PREPA, when PREPA was the owner and operator of the system. So there was a lot of misinformation, and the utility scale projects were beginning to take form and shape, but with a lot of opposition. And given the opposition that was perceived and experienced, there was a desire to join forces into an association to help develop the renewable energy industry in Puerto Rico, and that was the foremost mission that that occupied all the founders at that point in time. So that's how and when APER was created, which was to promote the interests and the growth of the industry in Puerto Rico for all forms of renewable energy and all scales. So we began, our focus was the Puerto Rico, how can it achieve its maximum potential in renewable energy in Puerto Rico throughout all the different modalities of renewable and all scales. Keeping in mind that our major purpose is to reduce energy costs in Puerto Rico, which was one of the biggest and has been one of the biggest drags in the economy and the consumers over the last decades. And of course, doing that, promoting the job creation in the renewable industry, and the main objective and activity that is taking a lot of our time is education. Understanding what are the concerns and issues that people will have about renewable energy, understanding them and trying to find ways to either reinform them correctly or to, if there's the issue is really an issue that needs to be addressed, and looking for solutions to mitigate or eliminate their concerns so that we can continue expanding and developing the industry in Puerto Rico. Given that background, I can tell you that our priorities for next year, which basically began in July, is just to complete Tranche 1 projects that were awarded a few months ago, and to make sure that they all meet the established commencement of operations date. We also want to bring back the Tranche 2 through Tranche 6 solicitation process back in line, so that we can continue executing and addressing all the issues that have basically paralyzed the subsequent tranches. But we need to make sure that they come back online and that we give them the priority, and the solicitation process can get completed on a timely basis. And within that process, the issues that are continue to hinder us, which is permitting process. That's one of the areas that we need to focus, that we need to learn from our experiences in Tranche 1, and make sure that we take action so that the other tranches can be more agile and get all the permitting that is required to get the projects off and going. And all that, again, is done through a lot of advocacy activities, a lot of participation in the community, and again, education, which it's never enough to make sure we understand why it is so important that we can get the renewable energy industry in Puerto Rico to develop as much as possible.
So on that note, and I think we're going to get into the tranches. It's going to be serve as a large part of our conversation today. But before we get into the first tranche, subsequent tranches, permitting, some of the specific issues, is you guys have been around, as you mentioned, for the last decade plus, looking at this issue. Before we hit record, you and I were talking about the progress, and that's sort of been a theme of Tom and I's recent conversations, reflecting on the last decade of progress in energy, the creation of an independent bureau, the legislative mandates to break up a PREPA-based monopoly, transition towards renewable energy. What has surprised you the most about that process? What are you most bullish on?
Well, if you look at the history, our histories from 10 years ago through today, it's been a struggle, right? It's been a struggle by either self-inflicted issues or issues that were out of our control. I am very happy and very bullish in that the regulatory framework that was created has withstood a lot of pressure, a lot of issues, and that's one of the critical things that we have been able to achieve. To have a strong, independent regulatory body that continues to do the job in making decisions based on information, studies, analytics, to shepherd our development of the energy industry in Puerto Rico. And I think that has been critical and pivotal over the last 10 years. That we have moved very slowly because of a myriad of other issues, yes. That it has been a frustrating situation, yes. But nonetheless, the regulatory framework continues to stand strong, and we continued. They have to be supported. We need to make sure that it continues to be strengthened, not weakened, and that we're vigilant. We're vigilant to what I call dark forces, that even though they project support to an independent regulatory entity, their actions will make you think that they're not doing that. So we need to be vigilant that the regulatory entity that we have created, a framework we have created, continues to be strong, continues to be independent, and make sure that we're vocal when we believe that there's been interference and obstructions from other entities that should not be participating in that interference. They should be participating, but not interfering with the decision-making process of the entity. We discussed earlier today, examples of that have been the conflict and the controversy with the Law 10 of 2024. And also, I mean, we continue to see a lot of what I call obstruction activism. Not activism per se, right? I mean, I think activism is very important, and activism is why our association is here. But it has to be a constructive, concerted effort to improve things and move things forward, not to obstruct them and just leave them stagnated without any solution to it. So we need to be vigilant that the regulatory entity continues to grow and strengthen and guide our efforts in Puerto Rico.
I think it's an important point, and you know, just going on the reflection question before we get again back into the trenches, would you have ordered the last 10 years differently in terms of putting, you know, PREPA's bankruptcy as top priority and not, you know, getting other things moving until that's done and taken care of, or a lot of parallel processes taking place concurrently? What would you have done differently in the last 10 years if you could looking forward to the next 10 years? What are our key priorities that we should have ordered properly in the last 10 years?
Well,
or were they ordered properly?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have put addressing PREPA's or the government bankruptcy first, because otherwise we would still be here without a regulatory framework behind it, right? If we would wait to resolve that issue, it's taking us more than a decade to address that. And it seems that given the most recent rulings from the appellate court of the US, that process is going to take a lot longer. You know, what I think is important is I would not order anything. If you look at the history since 2014, you know, once the first energy transformation law was created, we were hit by things that were really a result of past practices, right? After we got the transformation law passed in 2014, PREPA announced that we're bankrupt, and then the central government was bankrupt. Then we had, there was a lot of time between deciding what was going to happen and then installation of the Federal Oversight and Management Board. So there's a bankruptcy issue. So once that scenario started clearing up on how Puerto Rico was going to work through its bankruptcy issues, we had other problems coming along, like COVID, like the earthquakes that happened the year after that. So we've been hit by a lot of events within our control and without our control that I think have delayed progress in this area. But I would not have done anything different as far as ordering is concerned, where I would definitely prioritize going forward many key issues. Number one is we need to get a lot better at the permitting process in Puerto Rico. That if you look at over the last 10 years, permitting has been an issue, and how we structure the different permitting agencies that have to make decisions on these projects. We need to take a look at that and operationalize it a lot better. And 2 weeks ago, I was talking about what can we use as a model to follow? And I can tell you that, as you know, most of the projects in Tranche 1 are participating and are requesting financing from the Loan Programs Office of the Department of Energy. And that process, everybody was expecting to take a year and a half, or maybe longer, because it's a complex process. It needs NEPA evaluation, National Environmental Policy Act evaluation, and everybody was counting that whole process was going to be very bureaucratic, very lengthy, and it was going to take more than a year. So everybody was expecting that all these projects were going to be delayed even further. And the history told us that has not been the case. Within 6 months, we got the first conditional commitment to finance one of the projects in Puerto Rico, and then the process for evaluation for the other projects in Tranche 1 are following right behind this one. So the question is, I mean, there are bureaucratic and environmental evaluation and permitting processes that are very complex. But if we can follow the structure on how the LPO managed to process this in such a short time, I think that will help our agencies here in Puerto Rico understand how to best restructure themselves, how to manage this process so that it doesn't become a bottleneck in approving these projects. So I think the priority should be, as we go forward, how do we restructure our current agencies so that they can operate more efficiently and effectively. And we're not talking about executive orders. I'm not talking about new laws. I mean, we have plenty of that. I think that orders and laws, there's plenty of that make all these projects a priority. The issue is the execution of the agencies that need to handle this and they make the permits or they meet their evaluation, either for or against it. The issue is that it's taking too long, and that needs to be addressed from a governmental perspective, and hopefully it gets done, and leaving away politics and leaving away all that external influence, and look at it from an operational perspective and get that improved.
Julian, I'm not sure that, I mean, maybe you know this. The Loan Program Office, I think, has utilized the carbon communities section, I think, to expedite and provide loans to Puerto Rico for basically they call this a changeover in infrastructure from fossil coal to thing in order to create the loan program that they've aimed at this. Is that right? Do you know what section that the loan program is using? Because that may have helped.
Title 1706 for the
that's
energy
what I thought.
Infrastructure reinvestment, and most of these projects will go along, right? Or all of them will replace existing fossil fuel generation. So that's one of the key requirements for eligibility for this program, and we qualify. Once the qualification process was ascertained, the issue became, how fast can we process all these requests for financing through their office and through the environmental evaluation that had to be done. And again, I think that that model that was established to process these products in such an effective and agile way should be a case study for our institutes in Puerto Rico on how to manage, how to structure themselves, how to process that. And I think that's something that we have to learn. And I think that, if you look at every agency in Puerto Rico, regardless, we seem to be very slow in executing. Even the most trivial task of renewing licenses or going to pay our taxes. I think we need to take a look at all our agencies and revamp them and redesign them and redefine them so that they can best service the people in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Julian, you said something really interesting I want to dig into just briefly, which is to what extent are the 700 plus megawatts of utility scale solar projects in this first tranche, are they adding to existing generation or replacing existing generation? And how does that walk me through just very briefly the 1706 on how do you qualify for that based on the difference between existing and replacing?
Well, their Tranche 1 projects, if you look at the projects that were awarded, they total 790 megawatts of generation and about 450 megawatts of storage. So basically that comprises the projects in Tranche 1. Still, it's a shortfall from what was expected. We're targeting up to 1,000 megawatts in generation of 500, but we're close. It's a matter of replacing that shortfall over the next tranches. Most of them, as you know, will have to be used, if not all of them, to replace current fleet that has been targeted for obsolescence or for decommissioning. You know that the AES coal plant in Salinas, they have a deadline. They will cease operation by 2027. That's about more than 400 megawatts of capacity that will be taken offline. So these projects will go to replace this and replace other very old alien generation fleet that is still working, but at a ridiculous low levels of efficiency. So I think the first 6 tranches, I think that the first 3,700 megawatts that are being targeted, most of them will be to replace current generation fleet that is obsolete or that by law has to be taken offline over the next five years or so.
Yep. Do you anticipate
the Sam,
sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, just to circle that off, right? So, I mean, I've been in conversations about during the legislation, pre the formation of 1706, and then actually specifically with Jigger Shaw starting kind of 2 years ago and last year about how can we apply this to Puerto Rico. And they took it up. But now the 1706 was, again, politically, it's aimed at carbon communities, right? So you're looking at coal stations primarily, and they're looking at making the transition to renewables. So it was actually deliberately drafted to be broad and as applicable as possible in order to be able to target, which tend to be poorer communities with on the mainland coal and in Puerto Rico primarily oil. But the ability, so you don't have to define whether you're replacing it, and you don't have to identify exactly a specific megawatt or a specific plant. It is effectively, markets going through a transition, being able to do it. And from the regulatory standpoint and permitting, it was aided by the fact that the sections called for effectively expedited NEPA and other approvals on the basis that it's not just a new generation, it's effectively replacing a fossil fuel generation, and so that the policymakers were able to help that along and help get it done. I'm personally, I haven't followed it really since I had the conversations with Jigger, but I'm delighted that it's actually working out to address a real problem in organizing this utility scale, and hopefully we have to see it signed yet, but hopefully seeing it shepherded to a financing. And we're going to have to keep doing this for a new utility scale in Puerto Rico until we can get PREPA out of bankruptcy and get the folks at the PREB and everywhere else to actually develop a financeable pathway, contracts and structures around the payments under the PPA, because there's still this sort of black hole that I hope gets organized in the process with the DOE. The DOE has been very specific in the past about the steps that it believes it needs the PREPA and the regulator and others to take in terms of contractual structure, certainties on payment, et cetera, in order to make these things financeable. So well done in getting this together. This is going to be helpful.
And it's been more applicable in Puerto Rico, right? Because of all the things that you have mentioned.
Por supuesto.
Many of these projects would have been able to obtain some level of financing, but at a cost of capital that would really have hurt the final rate determined for these products. And I think
Right.
that through the DOE, we have been able to do two things. Support low prices, right? One. Number two, send a message out to the market that we're serious in Puerto Rico in doing the transition, and that it's doable, and that we create certainty, and that Puerto Rico is ready for that type of change, and that it's okay, even though there's some risks that need to be addressed, and that's the importance of resolving the bankruptcy issue from PREPA central government and getting that resolved to solidify the certainty levels that these private entities need to see in Puerto Rico before they start reinvesting in our infrastructure. And that's been one of the, again, the DOE and the current administration, I think that they have helped Puerto Rico quite a lot regarding the policies, the support, and we're seeing it coming to fruition the last couple of weeks, and hopefully within the end, by the end of 2025, we will have 700 megawatts connected to the grid.
So that's for the success of this first tranche of projects. What is the two questions? One is, do you anticipate the 1706 LPO dollars to be the key mechanism prior to PREPA's bankruptcy resolution for subsequent projects? Is there other financing mechanisms, or is the Bureau going to see, LPO financing as a key indicator or a soft requirement for, project viability moving forward? Are AFICA bonds on the table? Are you guys talking to other government funding agencies? How do projects get financed beyond this first tranche, given that there may be an independent coordinator, that it's not going to be directly managed by PREPA? Walk us through what happens next.
Well, I would certainly hope that the LPO continues to support financing for the next tranches. However, we need to be realistic, right? I mean, like a bank, a bank needs to diversify risk. So it's only so much that you're willing to lend or support a customer before you miss your diversification goal, right? So you have to be careful. And I'm assuming the LPO and DOE is also looking at this. How far can they go in supporting Puerto Rico and making sure that the risk continues to be diversified across all the different loan portfolio. Having said that, I hope that they will continue to support Puerto Rico as much as they can. But we need to find other ways to finance this project through a private enterprise, right? And we need to do everything you mentioned is on the table. And I think that things that would help accelerate that and wean off the financing from the LPO office. We need to finalize the bankruptcy issue with PREPA mainly, and then with the central government as well. And I think, it took me by surprise, the decision of the appellate court in the U.S. reversing Taylor Swain's decision on determination on the bankruptcy. That really threw me off, and I'm just trying to understand why that happened, and why is this case different from what we have seen in other jurisdictions like Detroit, New York City, the Orange County bankruptcy in California with I think it was the Department of Education. So why is it that the terms of this decision was reversed, and what are the reasons behind it, which I still don't understand. But the finalization of the bankruptcy in Puerto Rico, that needs to happen if we wanted private entities to come in and support financing and provide new tools to accomplish this. I mean, that's going to be critical. Another thing that using the RECs, the renewable energy certificates, to help make these projects more bankable. That's another tool that definitely needs to be considered, but which is not being used at this point in time. So we need to address, all the different tools that can be used to make these projects bankable. They need to be looked at, definitely.
Yeah. If you want, Julian, if you want a better understanding of the decision and the discussion after that, I think Puerto Rico Energy in 60 Minutes recording should be up on YouTube. We spent about 20 minutes discussing that last Thursday with Angel de la Cruz, and it's interesting, from a point of precedent and law, the overruling of Swing was probably the right decision because it affected a specific class of bonds, revenue bonds. But the judgment actually had two parts to it, and people have overlooked the second part, which had to do with enforceability. And it kind of circles things around. It says, okay, yes, you're not violating the claim. The claim is still good on the revenues, but on the second part, you can't enforce beyond the revenues, which means you guys got to make a deal. And from a point of law, the sanctity of the concept of the revenue bond is highly important for trillions of dollars of established precedent for municipal bonds. So realistically, it was reversing a bad decision that was made out of expediency in the early stages of the debt renegotiation or reorganization. Yes, it throws things into the air, but people still have to get something done. And the second part of that decision actually opens the door to hopefully more creative structures and provides a hammer that could be used to effectively squeeze out any net revenues, which is what they have the claim on. So it means doesn't matter. This is set right as a matter of law, but you've got to come to a deal. You got to figure it out.
And we need to move forward on that one as soon as possible. We want to make the future trenches and future solicitation process in Puerto Rico manageable and bankable. We definitely need to do that.
I'll make. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to, talk about an element of both the Renewable Energy Producers Association, the renewable energy goals in Puerto Rico, the NREL DOE study on achieving 100% renewable. Sometimes it feels like renewable is a stand-in for solar. And a lot of the projects, all the projects we've seen so far, solar, you and I have talked offline about how do we implement other technologies. Obviously, I'm coming from the private sector in hydro. You and I were talking about ocean earlier. How do we encourage and you mentioned diversification. How do we encourage other types of renewable energy in the generation mix? Are those technologies mature enough for the LPO to be supporting them in subsequent tranches, or are we putting ourselves down a path where the vast majority of utility scale projects moving forward will be solar and battery storage and nothing else?
Well, my view is that short term, right? Given the criticality and urgency to add new generation capacity, being renewable, I think the short term, the known technologies and state technologies will be wind and solar and hydro, but I think that with time, as new technologies emerge or improve in Puerto Rico, they should be part of the equation. And our current legal framework allows for multiple sources of renewable energy. Short term, though, I mean, given the proven technology that we have seen so far being implemented, like wind and solar will continue to be the prevalent sources in Puerto Rico. Given also the availability of the resource in Puerto Rico, I mean, solar would seem to be more compatible with what we need to do short term in Puerto Rico. I think one of the areas that I think that we need to figure out a way, I mean, Puerto Rico being surrounded by water and having the depths that surround us in Puerto Rico, I think that we should definitely take a look at ocean and invite people to do more investigation in Puerto Rico about how can the ocean energy be used and develop technology so we can use the ocean source for energy in Puerto Rico. And I think that looking forward, I think that that's definitely an area that we should take a look at. However, going back to the definition of 100% renewable, I think that when people hear 100% renewable, that's all they have in mind. Renewable and nothing else. And I mean, it's been clear that we definitely would need to maintain what is called a base load or a firm generation, always present in Puerto Rico, just as a resiliency strategy and as a backup strategy. And I think that the PR 100 study was very, very clear in all the modeling. They agree that 100% renewable achievement in Puerto Rico is possible, but that even with that, we will always need a small fleet of firm generation, right? And they estimate probably over 1,300 megawatts that would need to be kept in place as a backup or resiliency factor to make sure that we can run a stable grid across Puerto Rico. Hopefully that firm generation will be from the least contaminant of the fossil fuel, like biodiesel or any other type of other fossil fuel that is the least contaminant. And who knows? We know what we know now, but maybe in 10 years, 15 years, there will be other types that can be used to maintain that firm generation fleet available in Puerto Rico. I mean, we're looking at new technologies emerging or old technologies that have been improved. I know it creates a lot of controversy, but nuclear energy, has come along very, very rapidly with higher levels of safety and higher levels of minimizing levels of risk. And I think that in Puerto Rico, even though we are in an earthquake territory, that we should not discard any technology that proves to be safe, that can be economical for Puerto Rico. And I think that we should not discard it. And as long as it's safe, clean, and economical, that we should keep our options open as a possibility of using them in Puerto Rico if everybody's seen to agree with it. So having said that, then new nuclear technology, I don't see why it cannot be a possibility also to be part of that firm generation in Puerto Rico that is required, and that we should not close our possibilities to those options.
Yeah. You mentioned the grid study, and I'll mention here that Center for a New Economy came out with their evaluation yesterday, I think, or the day before, on the PR 100 study, and I haven't had a chance to go through all of it, but as usual, Sergio Marxwatch and these guys do a very good job of parsing out and commentary and communicating what is actually communicated, because the headlines when it came out didn't talk at all about the challenges and the costs or other things. It was just, yes, PR 100. It's 100 is absolutely possible. So it's good to know that you got to work for it. But I don't know if we have the link to that, guys. I know I sent it around, but if somebody could add it to the chat, we could get that link. And of course, Sam is very, very diligent about getting resources and things together and out to everyone after these meetings. So I'm sure the link will be in there as well.
Yeah. The PR 100 study, the final report, I think it's something that needs to be analyzed in detail. It's something that's 840 some page long, so you can imagine all the information that is in there. But yeah, I mean, and everybody has focused on the summary, right, on the good things that come of it. But I mean, it is a challenge. But that's there's a guideline or roadmap on how to achieve it. And yeah, it requires extensive reinvestment, which brings us to the point that, given all the monies that are being made available to Puerto Rico through the different programs of disaster recovery and FEMA and all that, the question is, having that roadmap, how can we best utilize those monies to further that plan, instead of using it for things that will have a less of a permanent impact in the island? So again, it's a challenge. It will create controversy, right? And how can we best use the funding that is available? How much more funding will we need? And where would that source of funding come from? But I think that we need to be smart and wise, knowing that 100% is achievable, and the challenges that we need to face and we need to go through to make it happen. We need to make a wise decision on how can we best use those money in favor of that development. And I think that one of the key issues will remain as we move forward with interconnection of renewable energy, are interconnection costs. And I think that those get integrated into the IRP plan for next iteration, that we need to start planning ahead of time of adding more interconnection points so we can continue the penetration of renewable in Puerto Rico at the utility scale level and also at the distributed generation level.
Yeah. Yeah, and since a lot more distributed prosumers effectively, how to balance that and be able to use that most efficiently within the grid. Grids are not historically designed to be two-way. It's very much from generation through the high voltage and then down, and you can't push excess power back up. You end up with a lot of heat rejection and a lot of problems. So you've got to be able to design the nodal network that you put together to effectively be islanded off and operate if you've got situations where you've got an oversupply where you can't move it. So yeah, there's a lot to think about. And one of the criticisms that I think we've had of the PR 100 grid study is that it didn't actually do a simple grid study. It talked about a lot of big things, but it didn't look at recommendations for how much penetration you could take, or look at different operating realities on the grid and make specific recommendations or suggestions to prioritize certain things in the way that a more contained grid study would actually do. And I know Ron has had his hand up through this whole thing. Sam, do you think we should let Ron ask his question?
So I just have a couple of questions before, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A. But
Sure.
I want to talk about timelines, because that sort of ties a couple of the things that Julian and Tom you both just mentioned. So PR 100 study is based on a long horizon of 2050. But there's intermediary goals of 40% by next year, which I think everybody's in agreement that timeline is obsolete. Even with these 700 coming online, making significant progress in closing out the first tranche, those projects are 12 to 24 months away from generating electricity. And Julian, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here. Some of the other challenges with timelines that may be associated with substation repairs, associated with some of the supply chains on transformers, and getting on to the interconnection points once they're identified and repaired. What are you sharing with potential new members, your existing members, newcomers to the island that are looking to invest in utility scale projects, with regards to what is a reasonable, responsible expectation of timelines for these projects to move forward? And not just for the first one. I think we have a good sense of where the first tranche is, but for subsequent tranches, for achieving the political goals laid out in the achieving 100% renewable. How do we think about timelines?
Well, it's a good question, and I have to be careful how I answer it, right? First of all, the goals should not be driven by you used the phrase, I know what you meant, political goals, and we need to make sure that we take that out of the equation, right? Because politically, everything sounds pretty, but we need to be realistic too. I would think that over the long term, by 2050, I think we should maintain that goal. I think that's achievable. On the short term, achieving 40%, I think will take us somewhere between 2030 2035 to do it. In the meantime, we definitely need to get some of our processes fixed. We know for sure and for experience that we can build a 40, 80 megawatt generation park within 14 to 18 months. Now, that's been proven, that has been done here in Puerto Rico. Now the question, we know that for sure. So if you look at timeline, I think we can put together 40% by 2030. However, given all the other parts of the equation that come into play, the solicitation process, which by the way, this is step one, right? Solicitation processes in tranche one was bad. Solicitation process in tranche two was worse. So we need to learn, what do we need to fix to make the solicitation process run as agile as it runs everywhere else? I mean, we know of solicitation processes in Mexico that take 3-4 months. Solicitation process in South America, they take 6 months from start to finish. Solicitation process in the US are a lot shorter. So why does it take 3 years to approve 1,000 megawatts? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why does it take more than 3 years for tranche two projects? And we don't know what the decision is. So we need to start from making sure that whoever is going to administer this process have the experience and a proven track record on managing these type of processes. We cannot continue doing by ourselves. We cannot continue contracting entities that do not have a proven track records in managing these type of transactions that are complex and negotiations are complex. And there are plenty of entities out there that can do the job. So we need to first of all, make the right decision. But the solicitation process needs to be fixed. That's number one. The permitting process needs to be fixed, and we talked about that abundantly over the last 10-15 minutes. And number three, I think that it is important that we can finalize el reglamento conjunto de permiso, right? That needs to get finalized, and we need to define that so that there is certainty of the legal framework of what we can do in an accelerated manner or not. So we need to put all those three pieces in place. Construction of the plant, again, 14 to 18 months is doable, right? And we have proven that can be done. However, how do we get to start constructing? Then the solicitation process, the permitting process, the reglamento conjunto, all those things needs to be fixed. In parallel, those responsible for interconnection, they need to also, get moving and move along as fast as they can. And that, I mean, that's directly LUMA's responsibility. LUMA needs to make sure that they have the right resources and they plan accordingly so that the interconnection studies do not get delayed or that they have to be redone, 2-3 times, and that the interconnection work and planification, it needs to happen aligned with the COD or the commencement of operation state that developers have been tasked to accomplish, right? So they need to get aligned and flow and move as fast as the developers have been moving doing the construction work. So I think that if we address those two things, LUMA needs to, shift to second or third gear, and we need to have the solicitation process and the agency's permitting process get their act together and get that done over the next year or two. And if that happens, by 2035, we should be able to meet our 40% goal without any major problems. Supply chain, it was an issue, and I think that that's coming back to normal levels. A lot of new incomers to Puerto Rico market offering products, improving their lead times. We have seen that happening, making the supply chain more available within the time that is required to accomplish these projects. And I hope that they will continue to happen as we are seeing some weakening in the economies in the US and Central America and South America. So that supply can be redirected to Puerto Rico needs, which basically we're driving many of the purchases of these power products for these companies in Puerto Rico. So I think the supply chain is something that was a short-term situation. I think that we're seeing that's not the bottleneck anymore. The bottleneck now is things that we can act upon and fix ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's easy to underestimate the importance of permitting from an economic development perspective. I mean, one of the key metrics for an ease of doing business competitiveness benchmarking project is understanding how many pieces of paper and how long does it take to fill them out, submit them, get them analyzed, get them responded to, and get them approved. These things, the old adage of time is money, permitting, clarity, and stability goes a long way to also reducing the cost of capital and the risk associated with developing these projects, which ultimately reflects to the ratepayer of how quickly is their grid stabilized and their power provided. So I have one more question and then I'm done. But we talked a little about innovations. What is the role of community solar in this broader gamut?
Again, I think that I think it's very important, right? I think it's very important. We cannot achieve our goals by just one type of development. No, we cannot achieve our goal with just utility scale across the board. We cannot achieve our goal without rooftop solar. We cannot achieve our goal without commercial and industrial developments. And again, communities development is important to address the different niche of short-term needs in Puerto Rico, long-term needs, especially communities that do not have the resources that they need, the support and help. And I think that's also very important. And we're seeing, you hear mostly Casa Pueblo, right, and everything else that has been done. But I think that community development is important aspect, especially if we're to create resiliency and a network of microgrids that will strengthen our grid and our energy infrastructure in Puerto Rico. That's my view. But at the end of the day, we have to also make sure and we balance our need for economical energy. I'm not going to say cheap energy, right? But the energy that costs the least and manageable by the ratepayers in Puerto Rico that do not take away our competitiveness. Because we talked about, community development, that's great. We talked about rooftop solar. We talked about utility scale. But at the end of the day, I think that it's most important that we have a resilient grid, resilient generation, clean generation, but with a cost that we can handle in Puerto Rico and that make Puerto Rico competitive when we are compared with other jurisdictions in the States and other countries. And I think that's the goal. How you balance those is important. But I cannot have, a system in my roof that I'm paying 30 cents per kilowatt hour, right? I think that's nothing that I'm looking forward in my house to have, right? I'm looking forward to have a utility scale project sell energy at 25 cents to Luma so they can resell it forward. We cannot have that. So we need to keep in mind our long-term goal of making sure that on a weighted average that Puerto Rico energy costs get significantly reduced as we move forward to 2035, 2040, 2050. I think we cannot lose that goal, because otherwise we could have 100% renewable at a cost that we cannot afford or the ratepayers cannot afford or manage. And I think that's important to have in mind.
Julian, I think that's probably the perfect note to end our fixed hour on. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the Puerto Rico Energy Forum. I know that Ron's got questions, some others may have. If we can, Ron, if you want to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation. Thank you, Julian.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
So, Julian, you are singing the perfect song to my ears, because everything you said is not only helpful, but it really leads to the road to solution. So I encourage you to look in the chat. I put in a copy of the link to our recording, the after hours recording for Puerto Rico. And the entire subject of that recording was a grid study that we proposed, which I'll get you a copy of, for Puerto Rico on how to go 100% renewable energy. And it's a breakthrough. And the reason it's a breakthrough is two people that conceived it, Dr. Richard Perez, famous, my friend for 30 years, and his son, Mark Perez, Dr. Perez. And they figured out an innovative way to do this that is not only proven, because they've done this study around the world, but it's cost effective and applies directly to Puerto Rico because they've studied islanded nations, the last one being Nova Scotia. So we have a solution at hand. And the other good news is in the United States, we have now funded 30 gigawatts of PV manufacturing that will be in place at the end of this year, another 30 gigawatts of PV that will be in place next year. So your supply problem is also solved. So these two things combined together, I think, will lead to a cost-effective way out of the problem that is plaguing Puerto Rico, and more importantly, plaguing the ratepayers of Puerto Rico. They've tried to do things, as Sam knows, which is put solar on their roofs, which works, and it's called voting with your feet, but it's not a solution for everyone in Puerto Rico, and that's what we need.
In agreement, in agreement. And again, I will be very interested in taking a look at those studies, definitely. So I'm looking forward to.
Well,
to
we
seeing
haven't
that.
done it yet, and that's the proposal to do it, but the reason that we can do it is in that recording. And I think I'll get you a copy of the proposal and we'll go from there.
Yes, and the most important that everybody is participating is, I mean, there's never a straight line to achieve a goal. There's always a lot of curves, a lot of back and forth, and maybe 2 steps back. But the most important thing is, number one, keep in perspective the whole industry and the ratepayers in mind. That's one. And number two, making sure that, yeah, there will be issues that will come along. And the intention is to take a look at them, take a look at the data behind them, and look for solutions to address them or to eliminate, to mitigate them as we move forward. But paralyzing ourselves because we're facing issues or opposition is not an alternative that we should consider. And again, that as we move forward, we're not going to move forward in a straight line. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be issues that we have to address. And that's what we're here for, to find ways to solve them and address them and implement them. So I thank everybody who participated again for allowing me to be part of this forum. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Thanks, Ron, for that comment. Dane Bonson, go ahead. I know you got a question.
Hey, Sam, great to see you on here, brother. Julian, I think your comments on not a straight line, curved or sometimes back steps are very important to keep in mind, and I appreciate that context. Used to visit Puerto Rico regularly in my previous role, and I really miss the island. But now working at a firm called Boundary Stone Partners. We do full service government relations, and actually we're AES's lead on those projects that resulted in them getting the conditional commitment. It was a very curved road. So your comments are very timely for me, but we're glad to be at the end of that very curved road. And we're very heartened to see the announcement that came out recently in conjunction with the Secretary's visit. We've heard from other companies that were a part of Tranche 2 that were selected. And they're hearing mixed things. And, I'm based in Washington, D.C. It's a lot easier to get through the noise when you're on the island. But they were told they had to apply for LPO funding. And for some of these projects, just given their scale, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just curious if you could point me in the right direction of where I might be able to get clarity on Tranche 2 and then go rolling into Tranche 3 on what's required and how that's looking. Did that make sense, or was my picture very confusing and realizing comments were not in a straight line either?
It is true. But the interpretation that is being given to it needs to be clarified. One of the requirement to apply for LPO financing was to make sure that if there was a better cost to finance these products, to use them and achieve them. And if you could pass that saving or that improvement to a ratepayer, that's why they say it was required to take a look at the LPO. However, the LPO has been very clear that, projects of certain magnitude would not qualify because the amount of cost to do the loan will be exorbitant and will basically kill the goal of looking for more economical ways to finance a project. So it is true, they're requiring to solicit financing from the LPO, but there are certain, I mean, it's not, it could happen, the project could still go through even if you don't, because it doesn't make sense to be financed through the LPO. Then keep in mind that there are people that started here in 2013. Their projects got constructed in 2023, and they're still not connected. So yeah, it's been a lot of curves and back steps throughout those 10 years. So I agree with you. So the LPO is a requirement for financing, but it's just to see if we can accomplish a better solution from a cost perspective, so we can pass that benefit to the ratepayer.
I understand, and on your point on LPO being very clear on size of projects to consider has been made abundantly clear to us as well. So just given the timelines you outlined, it's just another roadblock in many ways. And the clients came to us just confused as they got this similar understanding from LPO. But perhaps I'll follow up offline. I don't want to monopolize the conversation with my individual comments.
No, but Dane, you might be able to convince several to consolidate, right? I mean, they're different locations, but if you could finance them under one banner, it's mostly the legal and expert costs that if you're like sub 50 megawatts, actually maybe even sub 100 in some cases, it makes it very difficult to take it through the LPO process, because you have to go to NEPA, you need certain reports, you need to hire a DC law firm. So yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to do, but getting a few of them through, should help the next tranche. I know that everybody was asked to go to LPO, but I hope it doesn't become a condition for the smaller guys, that maybe they can reapply, or they can go forward at some point in the future when there are other financing alternatives. The work that's being done, carving a path through some of these things will make it easier for more development money to come through, will make it easier for banks and others to come to the table. It's the whole point of the LPO. And if Jigger has anything to do with it, it won't just be one tranche and done, right? I mean, his whole philosophy coming in was, it can't just be we're financing the first ones and then everybody else is on their own. We've got to make the transition, so we can change things up, but we might need to do, the third generation of this type of technology or this type of thing. The situations in carbon communities is not that different. So we don't know who the next administration is going to be, or the next head of the LPO is going to be, but he set a direction and one that's actually pretty bipartisan in terms of focusing on things that work. So we're all hoping that it gets done. And I don't know if Brandon is still heading up Boundary Stone or whether he's moved on. But
Thomas, you're right. And one distinction, while not that important, probably in the same bucket of evilness, we're a government relations, not a law firm.
Exactly.
So slight difference. And I don't know which one is worse.
It's very lawyerly of you, Dane.
You all have your demerits.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The thought on consolidating projects is a good one, Thomas. It can be tough for some people that see each other as competitors to play nice, but it's worth the conversation.
Yeah.
It also, I think, is relevant for our conversation regarding timelines. Unlocking capital for smaller projects ends up getting them through the pipeline at a different rate than some projects that have a different interconnection requirement and different land acquisition requirement, and a whole series of additional stakeholders that smaller projects may not. It's just, at the end of the day, how does it affect the ratepayer if those projects are financeable or not?
And let's not forget the insurance factor in here. I mean,
oh God, yeah,
it's a big issue, especially after Maria, and continues to be a big issue. And that's another area of concern that we're addressing and working with the Department of Energy and others, like trying to find solutions on how to make sure that these projects can be insured to the level that they have to be insured to guarantee the financing.
The scale for the first tranche to make them economically viable was about 40 megawatts minimum Do you anticipate that being the same threshold for the second tranche as we currently stand?
Yeah, the 40 megawatt threshold, I think, is not only driven by the LPO, but also driven by the cost targets that I think the FOMB and the Energy Bureau wants to see for Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So I think that the minimum 40 megawatts, and again, we have some various components here, interconnection cost being one of the, MTRs being another one. So the two cost components that can drive a project to be viable or not. And 40 megawatts also coincides with what acceptable ratepayers pricing should be.
Do you where do you see energy demand going over the next 30 years? Is it going up or down in Puerto Rico?
Even if it doesn't increase, we have an issue of replacing capacity that will go away either by law or by just a fleet that cannot continue to operate. We think the demand will continue to grow. There will be more demand. There's definitely no ifs and buts. If we looked at the EV market and expectation of growth, that will generate a lot of demand for Puerto Rico just by itself. And there's quite a lot of penetration of EVs in Puerto Rico, electric vehicles. The expectation of the economy to continue to grow, I think that will also continue to drive the demand. And I hope that given all the monies for capital investment in Puerto Rico, that we will get to see that growth maintained by organic reinvestment in Puerto Rico as we move along, knowing depending on the funding that we're receiving for reconstruction. So I think the demand will continue to grow up to 2050 by just what we're doing right now. And if we continue to seek new companies to come in Puerto Rico and invest in Puerto Rico and establish themselves in Puerto Rico, I think we're gonna see that grow substantially and significantly.
Yeah.
So that's my view on what's going to happen with demand.
So Sam's leading question probably leads right into our planned guest next month is Maria Hilda Rivera from LUMA, who is heading up the IRP, which they want to delay until next year for several of the reasons that you've talked about, I'm sure. And I think we'll probably talk a little bit about predicting energy demand, because it's one of those things that frustrates everyone when they dig into this issue about planning for the longer term. You know, the FOMB has to make one decision, the IRP and the regulator have to make decisions. You know, the investors in different areas have to make decisions, although they're largely guided by the decisions of those first three in Puerto Rico right now. And so the PR 100 study had to make an assumption about demand growth, and you're playing off different factors and when they happen. Attrition, energy efficiency in Puerto Rico is a big delayed investment, if you want to think about it, even without a push to have much more efficient equipment or operations. As soon as you start getting some economic growth and people get money in their pockets, they often invest in new televisions, new refrigerators, new air conditioning units. And just by that turnover, you're consuming less energy. On the plus side, that tends to lead people after a short period of time to consume more, which means more growth, which means generally more energy consumption. But that's difficult for really strong people to model, and no one, including the NREL and those guys, have actually sat down and spent the time and the complete money to actually come up with a model that could continuously be tested. And the point of that sword really right now is LUMA, because they've got to work on coming up with scenarios for the IRP. And I don't know if any of you guys remember, but it was Goldman Sachs and a couple of other folks that worked on the first IRP with PREPA that was finally adopted, that, you know, kind of got things rolling in a direction. Well, was that 6 years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. So we haven't seen any of those resources yet brought to the table, but it's a great subject, and I assume that we will probably be spending some time talking about this very thing with Maria Hilda next month.
On that end, I think we'll leave it there. Tom, always great speaking to you. Julian, thank you again for being a part of Puerto Rico Energy Forum and contributing your perspective and insight. It's much appreciated.
Thank you again very much.
Thank you very much, Julian. Looking forward to
Thank
seeing
you,
more
everyone.
of you.
Have a great
Likewise.
week.